Do you want me
Take
to
the
film?
camera.
What do you want me to film?
Me.
You? Oh, okay.
Or the crowd.
All right.
Right, so we've got a few questions here. We'll start with your favourite topic, intermittent fasting.
Right.
So tell us about your supplementary drinks and a bit more about your intermittent fasting routine.
My supplementary drinks.
Supplementary drinks.
Oh, I'm not sure I can talk and film at the same time. How do you fucking do that?
Good question.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Tell us about your supplementary drinks and your
My
IF
supplementary
routine.
drinks. I only have actually no, I have 2 drinks that I have every day. The first drink that I normally start the day off, and I normally have 2 of these, is apple cider vinegar and hot water. Apple cider vinegar is an incredibly powerful antioxidant. It's a great cleanser. It's really powerful for cleansing out the liver, and also, just keeping the liver in check, and also keeping the gut bacteria in check as well. Like a really important thing for me is gut bacteria and gut health, because the stronger your gut health, the stronger your brain health, the stronger your immune system in general. So for me, apple cider vinegar every single day is something that I start off with. And then I also, when I'm performing, and by performing I mean like when I do my stage dance, I have ketones. And ketones for me, it essentially accelerates the process of putting ketones in the bloodstream. And the whole process of intermittent fasting for me is really about becoming ketogenic. I don't follow the ketogenic diet, but I do follow a diet where I typically eat within a window of about 4 to 6 hours every day. So normally I'll have my first meal every day at around between 1 and 2 o'clock, which is normally quite a significant meal. I'll normally have about 250 to 300 grams of salmon, as well as 200 to 250 grams of baby octopus, 250 grams. Not that I'm weighing my food or anything. For me, training just for the sake of training, for the sake of being healthy, it's a reason. But I'm quite, as you guys know, I'm quite obsessive. You know, I like to do things. I don't do things a little bit. I'm like binary. I'm either all in or I'm not. And so for me, with my training, I've been incredibly disciplined with my training, which is I'm getting back to the diet in a moment. And so for me, I eat between a very small window. I normally train every day fasted. So whenever I train, which is 3 to 4 days a week, I'm normally training anywhere between 10:30 in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that is, by the way, after finishing my last meal at 6:30 the night before. So I'm training in a fasted state, which is actually, it's quite a feat in itself, because it can be quite challenging, because you don't necessarily have the highest glycogen levels in your muscles. You don't necessarily have the highest levels of available carbohydrates in your bloodstream. But what it does do is it actually increases the fat adaptation process. So for me, as I said, I'm eating between 2 p.m. every day and 6 p.m. every evening. By fasting for at least 18 hours every day, it forces my body to go into ketosis, which means rather than me using sugars for fuel, my body actually starts using fat sources for fuel. Now, does anyone here get peaks and troughs with their energy levels? Okay, the reason you get peaks and troughs with your energy levels is because of the diet that your body is accustomed to eating determines the way that your body burns its fuel and the way it uses its fuel. So if you're eating like high carbohydrates, if you're eating quite regularly, that'll raise your blood sugar levels, and as a result, your body gets used to working with high blood sugars. And so you're using you're using sugars, as a form of energy. Once you start to remove simple sugars and certain forms of carbohydrates from your body for extended periods of time, your body moves into what's called fat adaptation. So instead of being sugar dependent, you become fat adapted, and then all of a sudden, you don't have these peaks and troughs with energy anymore. You just have this consistent energy all the time. And what's most interesting is my peak energy levels are always at between 12 and 1 right before I eat. That's when I have the most energy. And I literally don't need coffee. You guys probably saw the K days where I had coffee. It didn't fucking end well.
Oh my God.
Not good. I don't need it with my constitution. So anyway, getting back to actually what I eat, I'm eating 300 grams roughly of salmon for lunch, with 250 to 300 grams of baby octopus, 250 grams of sweet potato, 30 grams of soft goat's cheese. And then I normally 2 hours later I have my second meal. Now that meal, by the way, is probably close to about 1,000 calories. So it's quite a significant meal. Like, it is literally probably 3 meals for most people. Oh, and a salad. Got to get your greens. And then about 2 hours later, I'm having a shake, which is almost another 1,000 calories as well. In that shake, it's probably sitting around 80 grams of protein in that shake. I'm having collagen protein, pea protein, and then I also have a couple of rice crackers with some butter and I love my rice crackers. It's basically like fucking popcorn. Yeah, rice crackers, and then for dinner I'll normally have like a large, like a 350 gram piece of chicken with a little bit of sweet potato and a salad. So right now I'm consuming anywhere, depending on the training day, between 2,400 to sometimes 3,200 calories a day, but I'm averaging about 2,400 to 2,800 calories per day most days, and that's why I'm probably carrying a little bit of excess body fat right now. I think that was a bigger answer.
That was a huge answer.
Was
Somebody
that
who's passionate about it, as you can see.
I'm a little bit excited.
Yeah. Did anybody see the K-Day recently? If you want to know more about his body composition, there's a whole episode on the scan.
That was
actually,
fucking amazing. Yeah.
Next question, Emily Vernon. Have you ever felt scared of getting what you really want? If so, how do you overcome that fear?
Yeah, look, I think days gone by, I have been fearful of achieving what it is that I wanted, and I think more often than not, that was probably related to a sense of self-worth. Can anyone here relate to being afraid of achieving what it is that you want? I think that's twofold. I think firstly it comes down to, I think it's probably three. I think sometimes we're afraid to get what we want because then we might lose it. I think sometimes we're afraid to get what we want because we don't think we deserve it. And I think sometimes we're afraid to get what we want because we're afraid of what people will think, either consciously or unconsciously. And everyone's motives for fear will often be different, but I honestly believe they're rooted in one of those three things. For me, I've had to work on all of those issues. I've had in the past massive self-worth issues. I've had massive issues around, my concern about what other people think. But one of the things that I observed when I started studying wealth, about 21 years ago, I started studying wealth. And by wealth, I mean the biographies of the wealthiest people in the world, self-made, millionaires, multimillionaires, and billionaires. And one of the key characteristics that I saw in all of the research that I was doing was these people had a very high disregard for other people's opinions. Like they honestly didn't care what other people thought. And I guess it's less about they didn't care what people thought. I saw a very high incidence of interest and curiosity in the thoughts of other people, but a very high level of disregard for the emotional attachment to what other people thought. And so for me, I'm very much a practitioner when I'm learning, so I've had to go through the process of literally just conditioning myself and practicing not caring what people think. And so for me, once I got past that, it was less about the fear of being successful and then working on, because we've got the fear of success, but we've also got the fear of, so we're fucked both ways, right? We're either scared of success or we're scared of failure. And I've had to work on both. But I think it's an incredibly rewarding journey, because the more work that you do on those fears, you're not really working on the fears. What are you working on? You're working on yourself. And through the process of working on the fears, what are you getting to know more about? Yourself. Like this whole, I think I can summarize personal development with 99% of personal development can be summarized with two words: self-awareness. The more aware you become of self, the more you understand you, the more you understand what you're afraid of, the more you understand what your drivers are, the more you understand what the things that are important to you, the more you understand what your triggers are, emotionally and stress, the easier it is for you to navigate the world. And so for me, I honestly believe that the greatest gift that you can give yourself and even give your children is the gift of presence and the gift of, self-audit, the gift of being able to reflect on self consistently and consciously in a proactive way, not a destructive way. Because I think there are a lot of people who are quite self-aware, but they're quite self-aware in a destructive way. They can be very conscious of who they are and conscious of the things that they do, but rather than looking at it from an equanimous perspective and seeing both sides, people might be aware of their own behaviors, but they'll judge themselves. And that to me is a symptom of self-awareness. Is as you start to get to know yourself, you'll start to see things you don't like. And as you see things that you don't like, you'll be tempted to judge yourself. And that's where it's really important to take being quite equanimous, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it equanimous?
Equanimous?
And equanimous?
I don't know.
Being balanced. In your perspective, and realizing for everything you don't like about yourself, there's something that you will like about yourself. For every bad thing about you, there's something good about that. And for me, it's not even a concept anymore. It's a reflex action. It started off as a ritual of every time I would look at something I didn't like about myself, I'd balance it out with something I did like about myself, or I'd look at something, a negative trait, and I'd go, okay, well, what's the benefit of that negative trait? And after that ritual over time became a habit, and that habit literally now is just a way of being. For me anymore, I don't have to try to balance my psychology out. It just happens naturally. and that's the thing. It does still require a little bit of effort to show up and a little bit of effort to provoke the thought, but for the most part, it becomes very autonomous behavior. And for me, yeah, I think the easiest way to create any form of lasting change is getting your behaviors to become as autonomous as possible, as quickly as possible. And for me, the way I do that is through rituals, okay, by actually having rituals and using structure and structure and discipline around those rituals to ensure that they're repeated on a regular basis. And this is where I fucking win 99% of the time, because I'm obsessive. And so for me, I'm OCD when it comes to psychology. And so I'll sit there and I'll recite, when I first started, identifying what my story was, and I started to recode my story, I literally came up with originally what was called the 10 Commandments. And most people who do this process, they might come up with 10 commandments or 10 commands that they want to suggest into their brain to reprogram themselves to create and achieve other things that they want. But then they might read it 2 or 3 times. I would sit there and I would read it out like 50, 60 times a day. And sometimes that was just in the morning. I'd drive around in my car. I'd flip the rearview mirror down. I'd have my 10 Commandments. I'd sit there and I literally just obsessed to the point of completely transforming my psychology. And I mean completely transforming my psychology just through the obsession of the ritual and the habits. But it's about obsessing, for me, on the rituals that are actually procreative and not, pro-destructive, if that is even a fucking word.
Yeah. Well, that comes to me is acceptance.
Yeah, a high level of acceptance for who we are. And it's a lot easier to accept who we are when we can see both sides.
Anna Foley asks, how do I let go of
Hey,
my
Anna.
father's entrepreneurial success whilst honouring him?
Let it go.
Nailed it.
Look, I think the greatest honor that you can give any parent is the gift of same thing. The greatest honor that a parent can give any child is the gift of love and acceptance. Now, the greatest way that you can honor anyone is through accepting them for who they are. And in terms of letting them go, I think sometimes the challenge that we have, especially maybe in a parental context, is if we put someone up on a pedestal, we create 2 issues. Whoever we put on the pedestal often ends up in the pit. But whoever we put on a pedestal, we create this level of contrast between us and them that sometimes creates this chasm that we think is insurmountable. And so for me, I'm one of the things that I like to do, whether it be a father in this instance, or Richard Branson or Elon Musk, is I'm always looking to put someone on my level. Does this make sense? Because whoever we put up here, whenever we put someone up here, they become out of reach. And one of the things I've observed, and you'll observe this yourself, if you apply a level of awareness to the people that you study, if you're interested in studying wealth, start studying wealthy people. Start reading the biographies of wealthy people. Like, I've read hundreds of biographies of some of the wealthiest people in the world. One of the greatest biographies that I've read was called Titan, which was 858 pages of the life story of John D. Rockefeller. And what was interesting is I read this book, and it was like the fucking audio is like 72 hours. Like, it's a fucking 36 hours, 38 hours. It's epic. But the whole time I was reading the audio and reading the book, I was constantly and I did the same thing when I first started reading, Richard Branson's biography and Elon Musk. Every biography that I read, I'm looking for traits that I have that they have. So when I'm reading about Elon Musk and I read a section about how he's so obsessive about the things that I go, oh, I'm just like that. Or if I'm reading about Richard Branson, about how he's dyslexic and he has the inability to read things properly, I go, oh, I'm just like that. So as I'm studying people, I'm not putting people on a pedestal. I'm constantly trying to bring them down to my level by looking for relativity and by looking for a relationship between what traits do they have that I have as well. And when you start to do that, you start to bring people into the realm of, okay, they're no longer up here, they're here. And when they're here, there's no chasm, there's no gorge, it's achievable. And that for me has probably been one of the greatest things that I would suggest to Yvonne.
No, it was
Anna. In this scenario is, rather than comparing yourself to your dad, if that's what you're doing, start looking at what it is, the traits that your dad has that you respect, and start seeing them within yourself. Because again, that's a great form of respect, is starting to identify what you love about others within yourself. And the more you can accept what it is that you love about others that they have within yourself, the higher level of respect you have for the people that that put that in you in the first place. So yeah, good question.
Absolutely.